As much as he was known for his roles in scholarship, teaching, and leading, those who knew Professor Symons best recognized him as warm, gracious, ever-curious, self-effacing, and kind. He held friendships as sacred and nurtured them over decades. His sense of conviviality helped shape many of Trent's earliest traditions and made him an always respected host and lifelong friend.
The fire was the place that you probably met with my father if you were coming for a visit. He loved to sit in the living room. He loved to sit by the fire. We often ate dinners by the fire. That was the hub of the house. He also enjoyed sitting in the kitchen with my mother in the mornings in his later years. And of course, he would still go to his unbelievable office. I don't know how he got through all the papers. I don't know how he got to his desk. It's piled this high all the time, but that was how he operated. But definitely, anytime you went to Marchbanks and any time that was spent there in the last few decades, it was by the fire for sure.
My experience with Tom was drinking scotch, and I have wonderful fond memories of being at Marchbanks in the evening, having a scotch with Tom and with Christine and with Glenys. The fire is crackling and we're talking about everything. Tom was a wonderful conversationalist. I think what I enjoyed the most was talking about Canadian history, which he knew like the back of his hand. But I would just say those were marvelous evenings, and I will miss them going forward.
And Tom Symons is one of these wonderful people who was brilliant, a scholar to the end, and he enjoyed people and having fun. He was so good to my family. We would always go out and have a barbecue with him. And I would say, well, what would you like? Would you like steaks? Would you like, fancy sausages or things like that? And he said, no, just a hot dog. I love a good barbecued hot dog. And I think that in itself is so indicative of how special and complex Tom Symons was. A brilliant scholar, connected to the government, internationally known, someone who could be quite intimidating and not down to earth at all, but he knew the value of conversation and having a good hot dog.
The one thing that he always did was when he spoke, he always talked about the support that Christine had given him throughout the years. And, I guess as a wife, that just meant a lot to me.
I think the memory that stands out the most for me is the evening when the Department of Indigenous Studies made Tom and I honorary elders. And as part of that delightful ceremony, Paul Martin, former Prime Minister of Canada, was invited to speak to the Assembly. And after the speeches and the induction of Tom and I as honorary elders, we went to a small lecture room to answer questions. And so there were the three of us on the stage. There was Paul Martin, Tom Symons, and myself. And at one point, gifts were given out, which included Trent sunglasses, and each of us put on the sunglasses simultaneously, and we burst out laughing. And there's a delightful photograph of the three of us having a great chuckle with these Trent sunglasses on, and that's a favorite memory that I have of Tom. He in between Paul Martin and myself, enjoying a good chuckle, and as everyone knows, Tom liked a good chuckle and a hearty laugh.
THB's memory for people, which was amazing. At Trent's 50th reunion, I was in line to speak to him. And when I got up there, I was about to give him my name and show him my badge. I hadn't seen him in 45 years. And, you always want to not leave people fumbling for names. Before I could do that, he reached out his hand and he said, "Well, Miss Finlayson, and how are you?" I was absolutely floored 45 years later.
His greatest gift was his gift for friendship. And his gift for friendship never showed itself more powerfully and emotionally and dramatically than in the breaking of bread together, in having meals together. His sharing of meals with people was infused with his spirit of friendship, with his great enjoyment of life and his enjoyment of people. And that was not only delightful for all the people who got to spend time with him, enjoying a meal together, but was in a curious way inspiring. It filled you with a spirit of life and love and friendship, and was like putting gas in your tank for life.
There was nothing that I enjoyed more than stopping at his home, surrounded by books, music, and wonderful, wonderful conversation. He was so gracious and generous with his intellect and with his broad knowledge. He was a master of civility and kindness. And his love of family and his devotion to Christine came through. She was always there in our conversations, always at his side, and he recognized his good fortune. So for me, and with many others, we recognize him obviously as an inspirational leader, both at home and abroad. But for me, he was first and foremost a most loyal friend and will be sincerely missed.